Hi, my name is Lizzie Davis and I am presenting for the judiciary topic. Judicial activism is often defined as a legal philosophy of judicial decision-making where the judges allow their personal views about public policy, among other factors, to guide their decisions. It is often argued that judicial activism undermines the principle of separation of powers by allowing judges to effectively create or change laws, a role traditionally reserved for the legislative branch. Some recent data illustrates how this debate resonates in public perceptions of the judiciary. According to a survey off of an article from the Pew Research Center, favorable views of the Supreme Court of the United States remain near a 3-decade low, with an approximate 22-point drop from August 2020 when 70% of Americans held a positive view. Research shows that only 26% of Democrats view the Supreme Court favorably compared to 71% of Republicans. Nearly half of Americans think the court is conservative, while only 7% see it as liberal. Most Americans believe justices should keep politics out of their decisions, but only 14% think the court is doing a good job at that currently. This suggests that many people feel the court is being influenced by political views, which raises concerns about whether it is staying neutral and doing its job fairly under the Constitution. Today, Cameron, Rebecca, Sarah, and Holland are debating whether judicial activism is harmful or helpful. First up, Cameron and Rebecca will debate that judges should remain restrained and it can be harmful.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Browski, and I am on the harmful side of judicial activism. Judicial activism is harmful because it can be considered weak, unaccountable, and they make their own social agenda. When judges are first put into office, they are nominated by the president, and they have hearings through the U.S. Senate before they are appointed. The new judge that was then selected by the president most likely has the same beliefs and values as that president, which then weakens the judicial system. This goes for any judge that is nominated by a president. They rule based off of an ideology or belief rather than the law that then make it illegitimate. When judges serve for the federal court system, they are rarely removed and served for their lifetime. This leads to an unaccountability because they do not ever get removed from office, even if they misuse judicial review. This gives the judges the ability to shape national policies when citizens do not get a say. Not only that, but it also gives judges the ability to create or make their own social agenda. The Florida Family Voice states that judges are using their authority to speed up or advance certain policies such as same-sex marriage or abortion rights. This would not be something that would be passed through elected legislators, but because their job is lifetime and all of them agree on it, there is not much that can truly be done. When judicial review is misused, it can override what people believe and want for their nation. Judges should not serve life terms for many reasons. The older you get, the more medical issues you can have, but your ideology is also stuck in the past. With the Pew Research Center, they found that the public trust for the Supreme Court is at an all-time low. Nearly half of the citizens of the United States of America hold an unfavorable view of the Supreme Court because they do not believe that the Supreme Court is helping us in a positive way. No matter what your education, race, age, or political view is, over 50% still believe that judicial activism is being harmful currently. If over half of everyone is agreeing with that, no matter where you come from, you know that there is an issue at hand that must be resolved.
Hi, I'm Cameron Simpson, and I'm debating why judicial activism is harmful. Judicial activism occurs when judges make rulings based on their personal opinions rather than what the law states. Judicial activism is harmful in a way that weakens public trust and support for the Supreme Court, as well as weakening the balance of power. This is shown in the Pew Research Center article, which is already at an all-time low. When judges act on their personal opinions rather than how the law is written, public trust is weakened and individuals may begin to question the honesty of the judicial branch. Considering public trust is at an all-time low, this is important because the more judicial activists equate to more trust loss in the Supreme Court and government as a whole. This trust between the public and government is crucial because if the public does not trust judges, they will eventually be skeptical of the entire government system, which could have an impact on the way people view democracy. Another reason judicial activism can be harmful is by displacing power. The line between the judicial and legislative branches may be confused due to the judicial branch making laws rather than interpreting them. An article titled "Release the Judges" backs this statement by explaining Justice Anton Scalia believes that courts shouldn't create new rights on their own due to it confusing the balance of power. This is important because it allows the legislative branch to make the laws while the judicial interprets them, rather than allowing judges to make the laws themselves. Judges deciding laws based on their personal beliefs can give the judicial branch too much power, which could possibly throw off the overall balance of power between the branches of government. In the end, judicial activism is harmful because it disturbs the balance of power between the courts and weakens public trust. Judges should have to interpret the law as is, not using their own beliefs and opinions to create a policy. If the judicial system was restrained, there would be more public trust for the courts and an even balance of power between them.
Those are some great points. Now Sarah and Holland will debate that judges should be activists and that it is helpful.
Hi, my name is Sarah Porter, and I'm on the side where judicial activism is seen as helpful. Judicial activism is an approach where judges can influence rulings based on their personal values and beliefs. This means that judges will go beyond the laws set in the Constitution in order to consider the broader effect that society can have on the law. This helps promote new opinions for different policies and views on social justice because judges will utilize the creative and forceful opinions. Judicial activism is helpful because it allows for changes that relate to societal issues. Society is constantly changing, so it can be hard for older policies to fully coincide with the issues of society today. Since judicial activism is based on the values and beliefs of a judge can influence policies in order to make them more fit for today's society. Some laws and policies can be seen as outdated, so judicial activism is beneficial for helping laws and policies to adapt so that they can work better in society since society is always changing. When adapting these policies, judges will use an interpretation of the Constitution to aid with how to address the new issues based on societal values. This helps shows that judicial activism is helpful because it helps fill in legislative gaps. Since there are gaps in the legislature, sometimes legal precedents will be made in order to fully expand the policy so that it works in hand with society and individual rights. Judicial activism is also helpful because it also allows for minority rights to be protected from the majority. This helps prevent the overlooking of specific minority groups when seen by the legislator. Not only does it look out for minority groups, but judicial activism also looks out for other branches of government to ensure that there is a balance of power and that all rights can be protected. These different benefits help show that judicial activism can be seen as very helpful.
Hi, I'm Holland Wheeler. I'm one of the debaters for judicial activism being helpful. So here it is. Judicial activism is important because it helps protect people who don't have a lot of power or don't have a fair voice in society. In the article, Judicial Activism to be Thankful For by Colbert King explains that judges have often done what politicians were afraid or unwilling to do. During the Civil Rights Movement, many lawmakers supported segregation and ignored unfair treatment of Black Americans. The courts were the ones that stepped up to fix it. In cases like Brown versus the Board of Education and Browder versus Gale, judges ended segregation in schools and on buses, forcing the country to follow the Constitution's promise of equal rights rather than what the majority wanted or what people were trying to make happen. These judges used their power to protect people who were being mistreated and didn't have anyone else to stand up for them. Judicial activism gave hope and justice to those who had been ignored for far too long. In Unleash the Judges by Damon Root, it talks about another reason why judicial activism matters: keeping the government from having too much power. He believes that if judges are too passive, the government can pass laws that take away people's freedoms, like we looked at earlier with the segregation. Sometimes the majority of people might even support these unfair laws, which is why the courts must be willing to step in and stop them, even if it's not the popular thing to do. By striking down laws that break the Constitution or limit people's rights, activist judges protect citizens from government overreach to make sure that the government stays within its limits and that everyone's freedoms are protected, not just those of the majority. Both writers show that judicial activism isn't something to fear, it's something to be thankful for. Activist judges have helped create a fairer and freer country by protecting the powerless, stopping government abuse, and standing up for what is right. When the other branches of government fail to defend justice, it is often the courts that make sure that the Constitution's promises apply to everyone.
Overall, there were many great points made from each side of the debate on whether judicial activism was helpful or harmful. Thank you for watching.